I think that's what permit is. I don't know. That's what it's still the
Well, as I start to go through this process, I make all my documentation public because I'm not real hung up on proprietary stuff, so I will try to do that.
So is this digitally inputted? The application?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Because I couldn't really envision a gigantic eyeball of
Well-
paperwork.
There's an existing maxim that says no vehicle will launch until the mass of paperwork exceeds that of the vehicle.
That no longer exists, that's old.
Well,
Yes.
that's not exported down to the
Something
site.
that you guys, should know, which we did do, which we did in the Sherman Council challenge very late on, was have a workshop on how to fill the applications and do the process. I can't remember, I think it was the third year that we did it, but we
Yeah.
should have done it
Earlier.
early on from then on, so I would recommend.
Thank you, that's a good recommendation.
I would love that. I think that'd be really important for the community.
Okay, we can do that. Yes, sir.
When you were talking about fail safe, are you talking about empirical calculations like probability of mission success or probability of failing safe?
Well, probably
They have to be
failing
submitted, or-
safe, not mission success, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we
but
don't
that
do
has to be a numerical calculation that you provide or not?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, but it would be helpful if you had that.
I'm just wondering, because they do a lot of stuff for the military.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
Forgive me for being a bit hung up on this, but so under what conditions would the FAA require abort charges to be placed on the vehicle? And who would be responsible for actually having the high explosive permits and, you know, that kind of stuff for that?
Let me make an addendum to that question. Do you guys provide, or let's say NASA or whatever agency is going to oversee the facility, the launch facility, do they provide the self-destruct, or do we have to have it in place?
You have to have the receiver on board.
Okay.
And this has to be a standard issues receiver, or can it? Because that's everything in our CubeSat.
Well, no, basically, I mean, you're gonna have to prove to the FAA that you're safe.
Right.
Now, and if you go to a federal range, you're talking about launching out of a federal range, they are as picky or pickier than the FAA.
Sure.
And for instance, the standard flight safety abort receiver, like they're flying on the Falcon 9,
Right.
the package of pieces is in excess of $1 million, in excess of 20 kilograms.
Yeah.
So you are not going to be able to launch from a federal range unless your budget is on the order of that magnitude, because you're not going to get permission from the range. I think one of the only launches done without explosive charges was the Falcon 1 out of Kwajalein, and they were just flight termination. They did not have explosives.
Right. They were FTS.
70-degree launches out of Wallops.
Huh?
70-degree launches out of Wallops.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
been, at Wismar, they've done a few launches without explosive.
So it sounds to me then that launching at a commercial spaceport would avoid the necessity of putting explosives on our vehicles.
It's actually range by range.
Yeah, it's case by case.
Each case is going to make it.
You're going to have to prove to the range you can do it safely, however you prove that to be. And they have a set of standards that say, well, in the past, this is how they've done it. So if you want to duplicate what someone else has done and make the range job easy, that's one thing, but the end result is you have to prove.
Right,
It's
it's
surely
all
case
about
by case.
mitigation of risk, and that's the whole reason why we have the FTS.
And just to sort of interject here, smaller vehicles with thinner, tank walls and lighter weight parts and stuff have inherently much lower risk than orbital sized
Right.
vehicles do that typically need an explosive charge to dissipate the parts up in high altitude. So hopefully, most of the people in this room will be operating in a range where even if everything goes wrong, you're not nearly as much of a risk to any uninvolved public as an Atlas or Falcon 9 or something like that. But you do need to work out the design and the numbers, the amount of propellant, the amount of mass involved in the different components and how big they are to understand what that risk is going to be to people on the ground.
And dispersion rate.
And dispersion rate and all that sort of stuff. So,
Yes, sir.
and that's true whether you have to do it for the FAA or just for your own sake, is
Right.
that you really need to understand that before you fly a big rocket. So that's ground rules for really being, participating in this league.
Yes, sir.
And this discussion begs the question in regard to ITAR. Are there any guidelines as to how much of the vehicle needs to be destroyed to avoid the ITAR requirements if you land on foreign soil?
That's a good question.
Which ones might be?
I really don't know the answer to that right now. So
I didn't think so, but I thought it would be worth a while.
okay, so for every launch that takes place, once you get issued your license, we'll support the mission sit on console as a compliance monitor to make sure you are abiding by your representation made in the application. So expect either Marcus or I or somebody in the FAA to be sitting with you doing all of these launch campaigns wherever you're launching from. There are waivers that may be issued depending on whether or not you're not jeopardizing public safety. So we do issue waivers for launches depending on what the case is. It's case by case. Enforcement, AST may suspend or revoke a license or permit if the licensee has substantially failed to comply with any requirements of the Act, regulations, license or application requirements, or jeopardize public safety, or the previous launch had failed in a serious fatality, fatal injury to crew or spaceflight participant. Doesn't apply to you guys.
Well, it does bring up an interesting question though.
Yes, sir.
When the guys down in Mojave were working on the Spaceship Two design, they had that explosion. That didn't disqualify them in any way, shape, or
Well,
form.
that wasn't a launch.
It wasn't a launch.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it wasn't part of the launch operation. Yeah.
Industrial accident.
But there is enforcement if something happens where you endanger the public. That's really all I had to present in terms of the process. There's a lot more to it under the safety review part, which is a highlight of some of the bullet items that we'll be talking more about in the near future, hopefully, as you guys get closer to bending metal or establishing your program schedules. This is a list of the regulations that will be of interest to you, and as you move forward, the blue highlighted sections are the things that probably applies to most of you. The ones that aren't highlighted are just for like safety approvals, launch sites and reentry sites. The other stuff really applies with a section of 460 at the very bottom there. Doesn't apply to you all. Yes, sir.
If a satellite that's intended to, do 2 laps around and burn up, would that be considered a reentry? And would you have to file a reentry?
I don't know. I don't think that's a real.
I actually
That's the
asked,
plan.
yeah, I've actually asked Michelle Murray about this because I've been working on reentry vehicles on and off. And if it is not intended to come
Plan,
down
right.
intact and it just is burning up at the end of its lifetime as normal disposal or consequence of launching it, it doesn't count.
Then it's not a reentry
Yeah.
in the legal sense?
Yeah.
It's normally a planned event.
Yeah, if it's a reentry capsule that's intended to come back down to the ground, if it is a reusable launch vehicle where the vehicle comes back down and recovered, those count. If it is just a payload burns up in the atmosphere at the end of its flight, that doesn't count.
Right.
The stage that's not actively recovered
Yeah,
comes down to the water.
upper stage that burns up in
Right.
the atmosphere or comes down in the water, you have to have safety, that's covered in the launch license.
Right.
But it's not a reentry.
Yes, sir.
I was just wondering if you have a launch vehicle that's part reusable and part not. Where is that from?
Yeah.
I don't know. It depends. I mean,
It's still a launch license, or at least if I'm thinking it the right way. Say for instance, you have your first stage that you want to keep on reusing.
yeah, it's still licensed.
It's still just a
Okay.
And where can one secure a hard copy of this entire, I guess, set of rules?
I could provide it to.
They've seen it on the site, but that's online, man.
Yeah, but I think what you're asking about, this is like a quick list that you don't have to go search for. So I can give you this and then show you where to go for the rest of the.
Yeah, like I was imagining like a large book I could get.
thousands of pages.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've read more than pages.
It's old too, go online, the online is current.
All right, great.
These are also some of the guidance documents that we have available. And again, I'll share this with Mr. Baird before we leave tonight or first thing Monday morning. More guidance documents, looking at reliability, probability of analysis for expendable launch vehicles. The second bullet there is a pretty good one that we can provide to you guys. That's important for you. Let's see. So that's my information there on the screen. Again, I can provide it to Mr. Baird for additional questions you may have.
Do you have business cards?
I didn't bring any with me this time, but
Leave that up there.
all right. And Marcus, you're going to talk to Amateur Rockets a little bit more, or any more questions regarding Amateur Rockets?
Yeah, what's your contact information?
It's just marcus.ward@faa.gov,
Marcus C or Marcus K?
Marcus C. And it's 202-267-8655.
Can you say that again?
202-267-8655.
Yeah, I have one question. So you can build up in your licenses, like start with an amateur, get some experience, and then can you just jump right into the next part since you have priors with FAA?
What do you mean jump right into it? I mean, you still have to go through the initial process.
Right.
You'll be a little ahead of the game if you go the amateur route. You have a lot of data that we can use towards you applying for a license.
It wouldn't take as long, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, here it goes. Let's see. Sorry about that. Yes, sir.
So there's this thing of what should we go for, the launch operator or the launch specific, kind of license. So there's been some discussion maybe that there's going to be some maybe middle ground where if I need to do 2 launches in 1 week, I can maybe get a launch specific license and the second one will be much easier. Is that what you foresee might happen? If I don't want to go for the launch operator.
It's possible. Yeah.
And how much easier would that be, you think? Or that second one for that second launch?
Ideally, it would, I mean, if you're doing the same launch from the exact
Yeah.
same thing, I mean, it's a lot quicker
Yeah.
turnaround.
I thought a launch license could specify a number of launches, and it expired when you concluded those
they're
number of launches.
They're identical launches.
Yeah,
As
yes,
long-
dump place and everything else.
Right.
As
There's
long as
certain-
they're in the same launch location though.
Right.
Well, that's what I mean.
You couldn't do
Same-
multiple.
Same
Everything has to be
location,
exactly
right,
the same.
location, same rocket, everything else.
Sure.
And there's certain things you have to do before every launch.
Sure.
But, but it will specify the number of launches, so it's all one license application. Launch site operators, easy.
Just real quick, comparing a permit to a license, things I talked about earlier, it takes 120 days to make a determination on it. There's no comp for hire, no indemnification, can't transfer, but it's unlimited launches under the permit for 1 year, lasts for 1 year. The purpose of the permit is for research and development or preparing and gathering data for applying for a license and also crew training. So it's basically characterized as a light license as you move towards a license, seeking a license.
Just to clarify something, I believe that the actual terminology excludes doing an orbital flight with an experimental permit. Just to
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, like, did I miss the slide where it's the limitations of this license?
The limitations.
Suborbital.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
that's
this
it, that's it,
Yeah,
okay,
this is
gotcha.
so
All right,
I just threw it up there as a backup slide because in case someone was interested in
what was the next one?
and it's pretty much the same process for permitting, a little bit easier, policy review, MPL is easier, environmental is about the same, safety review is a lot easier. We would recommend that you launch in an area that's unpopulated or sparsely populated, as some of the companies are right now, like Blue Origin and companies like that are doing just that.
So the environmental determination would actually then be a consideration.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Are there certain orbits that you'd recommend as far as, I mean, missing airplane traffic on the way up?
You know, that's putting me on the spot. If I did do that, then I must accept your.
say he didn't hear Paul?
Marcus has your answer back there.
You didn't hear what Paul said, did you? Oh, we don't.
They cannot give you that answer. It's very frustrating when you go in and say, I'd like to do orbit A, B, and C. Which one would you prefer? Which would be easier? And they go, can't tell you.
We assess the application that's put on it. I mean, we're going to try to work with you and help you out. At least I know I can do with the parameter stuff. So, but we just don't normally say, go to Spaceport America for all your operations.
They might tell you if you're sitting down face to face with them and there is no written record, they may tell you some advice. I've never seen it happen.
If there was a problem with the orbit though, you would tell us to say that this goes into the bad area.
Definitely, yes. Yep.
So trial by error, or something like that.
Just throw a bunch.
What software do you accept as the results of for the orbit analysis?
That's the
What-
trick question.
I think it probably means
software.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's one we specifically require. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I mean, what are you using? You know?
Sure. The launch license requires that it be a 6th degree of freedom
Sixth
model for
That's
trajectory
for the
analysis.
flight safety. You're saying in orbit,
Like launch.
yeah,
Right.
telemetry. Yeah, we're not going to specify.
Right.
You don't specify.
We just say you need.
Yeah, we gave you the requirement.
Yeah, we give you the requirements. Whatever.
Yeah, we know we have
tool you
$6.
use.
That's
Yeah.
required. Yeah.
You could go from shareware up to like a $6,000 software, that's why I asked.
Okay.
We can give you some more information on that. Could you take a note on just getting more information on this software? Talk to this a little bit, or?
Do you want to? Y'all want to hear anything about Amazon? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, you don't.
You didn't fly out here for nothing.
It's only 2 charts.
Oh, really?